I say this with a great deal of seriousness. Most of you have attempted to let go as a human act by gritting the teeth of the mind, by pushing the problem into a far corner of thought and calling the silence faith. And then you have wondered why fear lingers like smoke after the fire is out. You have tried to let go and yet to keep a hand upon the wheel, and so the hand trembles and the wheel trembles with it, and there is no rest. What is the meaning of letting go? If it leaves you staring at the clock, listening for the phone, measuring outcomes, managing appearances, that is not letting go. That is a postponement of anxiety. Which of you, by taking thought, can add 1 cubit unto his stature? The Master asked. And I tell you, which of you, by an act of resignation, can add assurance to your soul? None. So let us put the real question on the table at once. How do I let go without becoming careless, passive, or irresponsible? How do I lay down fear without laying down duty? Do not try to answer that from the level that created the struggle, because human will does not have an answer that does not finally betray you. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. There is the pivot. Letting go is not a human act. It is a spiritual treatment. It does not begin with the problem. It begins with God. And it does not end with avoidance. It ends in inner assurance. If you are tempted to make it a technique of mental hygiene, resist the temptation. This work is not optimism, not suppression, not bargaining with God for a better tomorrow. This is not, if I think no evil, evil will think no ill of me. No. This is the realization of God's allness here and now, and the refusal to grant any effect or power apart from that allness. You start the treatment with the word God. Not with money, not with body, not with family, not with world conditions, but God. God is. God is life, the only life. God is mind, the only mind. God is the law, the only law. There is no power in any effect because God is all power. Every case, do hear this, every case is treated the same, not by ignoring it or minimizing it, but by centering consciousness in God and then ending in stillness. Be still and know that I am God. That is the governing line of our practice. First realization, then quiet. First truth, then a holy hush in which the soul receives its own witness. Wait, Lord, thy servant heareth. I must correct something gently but firmly. If you do not learn this, you will live under the law of the 2nd chapter of Genesis, under the knowledge of good and evil, forever reacting, forever strategizing, forever counting the odds and appeasing the fears. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Under that law you sow to appearances and reap appearances. You grant reality to 2 powers and then must negotiate with both. The Master cut through that illusion. Why callest thou me good? None is good, save one, that is, God. As long as you accept 2, you are Adam hiding among the trees, clothing yourself with plans and precautions, and every leaf rustles like a threat. There is another way. It is called grace, and grace is not won by cleverness. It is realized by treatment and received in silence. Do not think you can turn this on or off like your water tap. This is not a trick of a moment, but the law of your being. Letting go, that is, resignation, will fail you because it leaves you in yourself. Letting go, that is, treatment, will stand because it leaves you in God. Start with God, end in quietness, and as Isaiah has it, in quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. When assurance comes, you will know. Until then, keep to the way. God is all, then wait. You start the treatment with the word God. I say this with a great deal of seriousness, not with the fear, not with the chart, not with the letter from the bank, not with the news bulletin, but God. Why? Because God is omnipresence. which means there is no spot where God is not. God is omnipotence, which means there is no power beside God. God is omniscience, which means there is no mind to oppose, resist, or outthink the mind that is God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, one, not one plus, not one contested by another, one. And when you stand there, when you take your stand in that oneness, the case is already reordered. The axis shifts from effect to cause, from appearance to reality, from fear's rumor to the word that was in the beginning, and that was God. We do not take a problem and invite God into it. That is the way of petition, the way of bargaining under the law. We begin with God and discover that the problem never had authority. I am Alpha and Omega, says the Revelation. The first and the last leaves no room for a second. If I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. That is omnipresence, and it is not poetry to soothe nerves. It is the fact by which fear is unseated. There is no power in any effect because God is all power. What are you fearing then? An effect claiming cause, a shadow claiming substance, a voice without breath claiming speech. As soon as you acknowledge God as the only power, the effect is dismissed from the bench. It has no jurisdiction in your court of consciousness. Let us make the litany clear, because it is the scaffolding of your practice. God constitutes being. Therefore, God constitutes your being. God is life, the only life. There is not a second life running on a separate law. God is mind, the only mind. You are not a little mind peering out upon a big threatening world. You are the transparency through which mind knows its own. God is law, the only law. No calendar law, no hereditary law, no economic law can stand before the law that is spirit. God is substance, the substance of form, function, activity, opportunity. God is the very fabric of experience. And because God is indivisible, your true experience cannot be divided into holy and unholy, sacred and secular, safe and unsafe. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Do you see? There is not a pocket of exception, a little dark cupboard where another power stores its goods. Now, I must forestall a misunderstanding. Beginning with God is not the permission slip for carelessness. It is not an excuse to neglect wisdom, to throw away ledges, or to abandon clean, decent responsibility. What changes is not the outer act, but the counselor within. You refuse fear as advisor. Perfect love casteth out fear. Under fear, you rush, you hedge, you flatter, you fight. Under love, you move as one sent. You may pay the bill, you may make the phone call, you may see the physician, but you do so without bowing to the idol of outcome. You act from assurance, not from anxiety's lash. That is the difference between being under the law and being under grace. Under the law, you manage. Under grace, you witness. This reorders your identity. Who are you when you start with God? Not a separate mind trying to manage life from the outside. Not Adam hiding among the trees, manufacturing aprons of explanation and defense. You are consciousness awakening to what already is. In him we live and move and have our being. Not apart, not after, not if now. I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. The very life that beats your heart is God being God as you. And the only thing you can add to that is recognition. Recognition is your treatment. The practitioner, the one in you who knows truth, is the only one who ever receives a treatment. And as that practitioner stands in oneness, the appearance yields because there is nothing to support it. I received a note, yes, from a young father who thought he feared a supervisor, but really he feared a second power. Each morning he began with the word God, just that. God is. He sat 10 minutes and refused every mental rehearsal, saying only, "Thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory." On the third day, he noticed the old tightness had no audience. He made the same report he dreaded to make, but now, without the inner bow to consequence, the meeting passed like a shadow on the wall. What changed? Not the supervisor. The court was cleared of false authority. God was first, and therefore all. So fix this as your first point. Immovable, practical, immediate. God is all power and all presence, and because of that there is no other. Start there. Start today. Start whenever the mind begins to count and measure and predict. Say within yourself, not as a charm, but as a statement of fact, God constitutes my being. God is the life, the mind, the law, the substance of all that concerns me. And as that awareness settles, do not take counsel of fear. Take counsel of the One. Underneath are the everlasting arms. Start with God, and you will find the case already set in order before you lift a finger. What exactly is this, what you can't control? Is it your health, the body cells, blood counts, organs doing what they would do without law? Is it your money balances moving under the lash of markets and opinions? Is it another person, his will, her temper, their choices? Is it time, the clock that runs while you sleep and outruns you while you work? Is it outcomes, the report, the verdict, the weather, the world's headlines? Is it your reputation, the whisper of tongues, the shadow of misinterpretation? Let us be honest enough to name it. Every one of these is felt as uncontrollable because a second power has been admitted to your sanctuary and seated upon a throne that does not exist. What feels uncontrollable is not the thing. It is the belief that there is a power apart from God claiming authority over you. I say this with a great deal of seriousness. Behind anxiety, there hides an assumption, and that assumption is idolatry. You have assumed that chance can rule, that matter can decide, that heredity can dictate, that economy can starve, that malice can injure, that time can steal, that distance can separate. You have assumed these as powers, and then, in a strange twist, you have asked God to help you manage them. That is, bargaining with shadow. I am the Lord, and there is none else. There is no God beside me. If that is true, and it is, then every one of those names is not a power but an effect, and there is no power in any effect because God is all power. An effect cannot govern cause. A shadow cannot pull the sun down from the sky. A rumor cannot write law upon the heart of being. Do you see what control becomes under the belief of two powers? It becomes worship at the altar of outcome. It is the human attempt to secure the good and avoid the evil by management, calculation, and appeasement. That is life under the second chapter of Genesis, the knowledge of good and evil. And under that law, you will always be busy counting, hedging, rehearsing, arguing cases before a court that has no jurisdiction. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. When you fear a diagnosis, when you flatter a superior, when you hoard against lack, when you reshape your speech to manage rumor, you are bowing to an image of power. You have given it a name and a pedestal and burnt incense before it. That is why you are tired. Idolatry is exhausting because idols never answer. Now, do not mistake me. I am not giving you permission to be careless. I am drawing the line between responsible action under grace and feverish control under fear. You may balance the books. You may keep the appointment. You may speak truth to a neighbor. You may purchase a raincoat before the storm. But if you do these as obedience to inner assurance, you are under grace. If you do them because a second power has frightened you into paying tribute, you are under the law. And the law will demand more tomorrow. Take no thought for your life, the Master said. And immediately minds run to the pantry and the paycheck. He was not counseling negligence. He was dissolving the idol that claims to feed or starve you. Your Father knoweth. There is the dismissal of a false lord. I sat not long ago with a mother whose son, away at sea, was late in writing. She had already rehearsed the newspaper headlines in her mind. Another power, distance, and hazard had taken a seat. We did not petition God to cross the ocean. We removed the intruder from consciousness. God is omnipresence. Therefore, there is no place where God is not, and there is no place where your son can be apart from that presence. God is law. Therefore, no accident has law to support it. God is life. Therefore, no absence of life has authority. As this realization settled, the tyranny of imagination lost its scepter. The letter arrived in a day or two, yes, but the real event had already occurred. The false power was stripped of costume in the inner court. I could tell you of a merchant who watched screens and trembled before the god of volatility, of an elder waiting on a lab report as if a paper could write law upon spirit. In each case, the same error. In each case, the same cure. There is no power in any effect because God is all power. This must be understood before you can let go without becoming reckless. To try to let go while still believing in two powers is to release the wheel and stare at the ditch. You will snatch it back at the first jolt. No, the first movement is to expose the impostor. Call it by its name, a belief in a power apart from God, a claim without cause, an appearance without law. Then and only then will the hand relax, not in fatigue but in faith. And I must warn you lovingly, repeating truth statements will not suffice if you spare the idol. You cannot sprinkle holy words upon the altar of outcomes and call it grace. This is why in our work we do not stop with God is all. We proceed to the nature of error itself. We unmask the thing that pretends to be a second power, and we deny its selfhood, law, and cause. That is the next step, and without it, you will ever be pushed about by the winds you have named. Be still and know that I am God, and know also that nothing else is. Only on that basis does letting go become not an act of resignation, but the fruit of realization. What is the nature of error? I ask you to hear the question without reaching for old answers, because upon this point the whole case turns. What is the nature of error? It is the belief in good and evil as two powers acting as cause. That is all. Not persons misbehaving, not bodies disobeying, not markets misfiring, not weather rebelling. No. Error is the acceptance of a second cause alongside God. And once that acceptance registers, the show begins. Fear rehearses, diagnosis names, prognosis predicts, superstition bargains. But the show has no theater except consent, and the script has no ink except repetition. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Double-mindedness is the nature of error. Do not locate mortal mind in your neighbor, nor in yourself as a sinful somebody. Mortal mind is not a person. Mortal mind is precisely this acceptance of duality as law. It is the habit of believing that life can be both spirit and matter, that supply can be both God and money, that safety can be both presence and precaution, that authority can be both principle and personality. Under that belief, thoughts parade as powers, labels put on white coats and pass for law, calendars and genealogies masquerade as destiny. Out of mortal mind flow the phenomena called fear and its children, diagnosis, prognosis, and the small idolatries of daily living that bow before chance and call it prudence. But understand this, these are not powers, they are echoes in a room you have agreed to enter. Withdraw agreement and the echoes stop. I say this with a great deal of seriousness. There is no power in any effect because God is all power. Therefore, there is no law of disease, only the belief that a symptom plus a name equals a cause. There is no law of lack, only the belief that numbers in a ledger can outrank the fullness of God. There is no law of age, only the belief that calendars can write upon life. There is no law of malice, only the belief that personality can originate a force apart from God. Error is not a something, it is a nothing believing it is something. It lives by hypnosis, by suggestion, by the rhythm of hearing and saying and hearing again until the mind nods and calls the nod truth. Who told thee that thou wast naked? Not God. A suggestion told you, and you believed it. Make this practical at once. The moment you accept the picture as power, you begin treating effects. Pills against pain, speeches against rumor, hedges against loss, maneuvers against people. I do not say you will never take a pill or write a letter. I say that if you do so while crediting a second cause, you are under the law of two powers, and tomorrow you will need another pill, another letter, another hedge. But if at the first presentation of the picture you refuse its status as cause, if you say within yourself quietly and accurately, God is cause, and beside God there is no other, therefore this appearance has neither law nor principle to sustain it, then your treatment is directed to the only point that ever required treatment: belief. Remove the belief in a second cause, and the effect has no theater in which to perform. Do not deny error with anger. Anger is the homage. Fear pays to an idol it still believes in. Deny error as you would correct an arithmetic mistake without heat, with certainty. God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. That is Genesis 1, the chapter of grace. The Master closed the case on duality when he said, "Why callest thou me good? None is good, save one, that is God." He did not divide good from evil in persons. He removed both from personality and lodged all good in God alone. Therefore, what appears as evil is not an entity to be fought, but a belief to be withdrawn. What appears as good in personality is not a private possession to be protected, but God's own nature manifest. This is the end of double-mindedness. Now we are ready to say what part one of treatment really is. Part one is the truth about God. God is one, God is cause, God is law, life, mind, substance, presence, power, and in the very same breath, part one includes the accurate denial of error's power, not as a contest, but as a recognition. There is no other cause, there is no other mind, there is no other law. Say it as fact, not as magic. Rest in it as reality, not as argument. Each time the picture knocks, greet it with the oneness of God and the nothingness of a second cause. This is not optional work. Those who have refused to take up the nature of error fail to heal because they continue to fear effects. Take up this point and hold it until inner quiet begins to form. Then, only then, do we pass into the holy stillness where assurance comes. But first, let the mask fall. Error has no power of its own. It lives only as the accepted belief in two powers, and today we refuse the acceptance. They heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and the text says, Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God amongst the trees of the garden. Then came the question that still searches every chamber of human thought, where art thou? And the answer, do listen to it. I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. Fear, nakedness, hiding, that is the birth of control. And what pierced the veil? Who told thee that thou wast naked? There is the entire diagnosis in one divine question. Who told you there is a power to fear, a future to dread, a body to worship, a person to fix? Who whispered that life is in matter and safety in management? Who supplied the knowledge of good and evil and then sold you policies to protect you from your own belief? I say this with a great deal of seriousness. The addiction to control begins precisely where Adam believed the report of two powers and accepted shame as identity. They were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. That is Edenic innocence, the soul at rest in oneness. But under the law of the second chapter of Genesis, the knowledge of good and evil nakedness becomes exposure, innocence becomes naivete, and the mind begins to sow fig leaves, image maintenance, posturing, appeasing, hedging, rehearsing. Control is not strength, it is camouflage for the fear of separation. You tighten your grip because you think you are alone in a hostile universe. You speak to impress because you think favor is a human commodity. You count and recount because you think numbers can dethrone the fullness of God. Who told thee? Not God. A suggestion did. A belief in two powers did. Under that belief, you live under law. As you sow to appearances, you reap from appearances. As you judge, you are judged. As you invest in outcomes, you must pay tribute to outcomes. But hear the gospel shift. Ye are not under the law, but under grace. Grace is not a medal for good management. Grace is the unveiling of God's allness that dissolves the premise of duality. Grace restores Edenic innocence, not ignorance, not carelessness, but the pure heart that no longer consults good and evil as authorities. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. The pure in heart do not peer through fear's binoculars. They behold oneness where once they tracked threats. The Master cut the knot when he said, Why callest thou me good? None is good, save one, that is God. He was returning us to the first chapter, to God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good, which is to say, not a divided verdict, not a universe of mixed authorship, but one cause, one law, one life. Now you will see why our two-part treatment is not a pious routine, but the very way out of the trees. First, the realization of God as all power and all presence, and alongside it, the exposure of error as nothing but the belief in two powers. This loosens the grip. It removes the reason for fig leaves. It answers the who told thee with not God. Then the sacred waiting, Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth the inward stillness in which assurance descends and innocence awakens, not as a pose, but as your natural state in God. In that hush, you are no longer the atom arranging leaves. You are the transparency of presence, unashamed, because there is nothing apart from God to accuse, to threaten, to demand. Do not deceive yourselves. As long as you believe there are two powers, you will hide. And hiding looks like control, tight schedules driven by fear, sentences weighted to manipulate, purchases made to appease tomorrow. But when grace dawns through treatment, the hiding ceases, and action is no longer camouflage. It is obedience. You may send the letter, you may keep the appointment, you may adjust the plan, but now these are not leaves to mask fear. They are branches moved by the wind that bloweth where it listeth. From Adam's hiding to Eden's innocence is one movement only, from law to grace, from belief in two to the realization of one. And the door is the same every time. God is all, error is nothing. Be still until assurance comes. Then you will not need to control, because you will have come home and innocence will do your seeing for you. I say this with a great deal of seriousness. There are two parts to our treatment, and if you omit either, you do not have the infinite way. You have mental argument. The first part is the conscious recognition of truth, God's allness, and the nothingness of any other so-called power. The second part is the holy quiet waiting upon God until assurance, not words, floods the heart. Wait, Lord, thy servant heareth. Not I speaking to God, but God speaking in the deep of me. That is the method. Every case is met in precisely this way. Every case. Understand at once that our treatment is not directed at a patient, a body, a bank account, a board of directors, or a storm line on the map. We do not treat effects. We do not try to influence minds. We do not send thoughts. Our treatment is given to God, which is to say, our treatment is the correction of our own consciousness back to oneness. Therefore, the practitioner, the one in you who knows truth, is the only one who ever receives a treatment. When the practitioner in you stands in God's allness, the appearance finds no belief to sustain it, and it yields, because there is no power in any effect. Part one has a definite structure. You begin with God. God is. God is omnipresence. Therefore, there is no spot where God is not. God is omnipotence. Therefore, there is no power beside God. God is omniscience. Therefore, there is no mind to oppose or outthink the mind that is God. Having established the allness of God, you deny calmly and accurately the existence of a second cause. There is no law of disease, no law of lack, no law of age, no law of accident, no law of malice. There is no power in any effect, because God is all power. Then recognize man aright. Man is not a separate organism running on private batteries. Man is God expressed, God individualized, God appearing as identity. In him we live and move and have our being. I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. Therefore the life of you is God's life. The mind of you is God's mind. The law of you is God's law. The substance of you is God's own substance. Let that be stated as fact, not pleaded as hope. You will find that as part one grows clear, fear loses its argument. For error is not a thing. It is the belief in two powers masquerading as reality. Unmask it, remove from it selfhood, law, cause and effect. See it as suggestion. Who told thee that thou wast naked? And answer, not God. Do not quarrel with the picture. Strip it of authority. Do this quietly, without heat, as you would correct a sum in arithmetic. Then part two. Having told the truth, cease. Be still. Be still, and know that I am God. Do not go on repeating. Do not keep swinging the hammer after the nail is set. Now wait. Not waiting on time, not waiting on a sign, not waiting for a feeling you can describe to your neighbor, but waiting on God, receptivity, surrender, listening. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. Sometimes the assurance arrives like a gentle weight of peace settling behind the heart, sometimes as a crisp inner yes, sometimes as the disappearance of the itch to manage, sometimes as a line of scripture illuminated. Underneath are the everlasting arms. Or stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. However it comes, you will know, because fear has lost its voice. Until that assurance, do not rise. Without the second part, your statements are mental argument and will exhaust you. With it, realization becomes lived consciousness and will guide you. I must warn and I must reassure. Do not rush this holy interval. Do not think you can complete treatment when your last sentence is uttered. Treatment is complete when God's peace reigns, when the inner court is quieted, when you can say, not as bravado, but as witness, thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory. Then and only then move. The act that follows will not be management. It will be obedience under grace. This is our method, and I am convinced of it because I have lived it. Truth realized, error exposed as nothing, and then the sacred waiting until assurance comes. This is really it. Now we take part one out of abstraction and into practice. You start the treatment with the word God. I say this with a great deal of seriousness. Do not begin with the problem. Do not begin with the symptoms. Do not begin with the headlines. Begin with God, because only God is cause. Only God is power. Only God is law. Let the first movement of your inner work be simple, clean, decisive. God is. Having said that, continue. God is omnipresence, which means there is no place where God is not. God is omnipotence, which means there is no power beside God. God is omniscience, which means there is no mind apart from the mind that is God. God is life, the only life. God is law, the only law. God is substance, the only substance. God is spirit, the only reality. And then bring it home in the way the Master brought it home. I and my Father are one, not two, one. In him we live and move and have our being. Therefore, God constitutes my being. God is the life of me, the mind of me, the law of me, the substance and activity of me. Say it as fact, not as wish. Now, at this point, the habit of the race will try to turn you to the picture. Do not go, hold your place, and make the negations that remove fear's claim to jurisdiction. Because God is law, there is no law of disease. Because God is supply, there is no law of lack. Because God is life, there is no law of death. Because God is mind, there is no law of confusion, no law of another will operating upon me or through me. Because God is spirit, there is no law of matter acting as cause. There is no law of accident to overthrow order. No law of heredity to write upon identity. No law of time to decay the life that God is. No law of malice to arm a person with power. No law of contagion to leap where God is all. No law of economic tides to starve where God is fullness. There is no power in any effect because God is all power. These are not denials born of fear. These are recognitions born of truth. They do not fight a something, they reveal a nothing. God against the common mistake. Do not fight the appearance. Do not outline outcomes. Do not plead for change. When you fight an appearance, you proclaim it power. When you outline, you enthrone a private will. When you plead, you deny immanence. Our work is not to drill a hole in the picture. It is to stand in God's allness until the picture is seen for what it is, suggestion without law. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Not stand still and plan the salvation, not stand still and bargain for the salvation. Stand still and see, why callest thou me good? None is good save one, that is God. Put all good where it belongs in God, and all seeming evil where it belongs, as the belief in two powers, without entity, without selfhood, without law. You will ask, but what of sickness? The same treatment. What of unemployment? The same treatment. What of loneliness? The same. What of family discord, slander, headlines of war and famine? The same. There are not many kinds of problems. There is one illusion of many powers, and there is one realization. God is all. If a body presents a symptom, do not address muscle and nerve. Address cause. God is life, the only life. Therefore, there is no law of disease. If a bank balance flickers, do not worship numerals. Address cause. God is supply, the only supply. Therefore, there is no law of lack. If a relationship strains, do not rehearse personalities. Address cause. God is love, the only love. Therefore, there is no law of separation, no law of opposing wills. If the nations rage, do not cower before maps. Address, cause God is government, the only government. The government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God. The forms differ. The treatment is one. I would suggest you take this exact inner sequence and make it ready upon your lips and within your heart, quietly, without heat. God is. God is omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience, life, law, love, substance, spirit. I and the Father are one. Therefore, God constitutes my being, my life, my mind, my safety, my sufficiency. Because God is law, there is no law of disease, no law of lack, no law of accident, no law of age, no law of malice, no law of a second mind to will or to work. There is no power in any effect. All power is God's. Let those sentences be declarations of reality, not charms. Let them be the light by which you see, not the club by which you swing. And then, having established truth and exposed the nothingness of a second cause, stop. The hammer has set the nail. Do not keep swinging. Be still and know that I am God. Let the realized truth become awareness, not argument, presence, not performance. If a word rises now, let it be Scripture glowing of its own accord. If a feeling comes, let it be the hush that has no words. You have removed fear's badge. You have revoked its jurisdiction. Now, in the quiet, assurance will announce itself, and action, if action is required, will be born of obedience under grace, not of the old craving to manage outcomes. This is part one in practice, and I am convinced that if you will hold to it faithfully, fear will find no court in which to plead its case. Now we come to the thing itself, the communion without words, the interval in which prayer ceases to be our speaking and becomes God's self-revealing. I say this with a great deal of seriousness. Waiting is not spacing out, not hoping, not lulling the nerves into a manageable quiet. Waiting is receptivity in the presence of omnipresent God. It is the consent of inner hearing. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. It is not your mind trying to engineer an atmosphere. It is the laying down of mental tools in the awareness that the presence is here. Be still and know that I am God. Not be still and think about God. Be still and know. What are we waiting for? The inner assurance that God is on the field. I cannot define it for you in syllables, but I can tell you its fruit. Peace without a reason, clarity without strain, a cessation of the itch to manage outcomes. The prophets knew it. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. The Master gave it, my peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth. The assurance is not a sign flashing across the sky. It is the click within, the weight of presence settling where anxiety sat. Sometimes a line of Scripture comes alive. Underneath are the everlasting arms. Or stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Sometimes there is only the hush itself. You will know, not by argument, but because the compulsion to fix, to hurry, to rehearse has lost its authority. Now the discipline. In this holy interval, practice restraint. Do not return to the picture. Do not rehearse the problem with new adjectives. Do not measure minutes as if God paid by the quarter hour. Do not demand signs. Availability is the rule. If a thought rises to speak truth again, let it, but only if it rises. Do not drag it up to keep the wheels turning. If silence deepens, let it deepen. If a soft command forms, write the letter, cancel the appointment, go to the doctor, forgive him, close the account, receive it without drama and without delay. But if nothing specific forms, remain. Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. The strengthening is often the sign that the click has occurred. I know the mind will protest. How long? What if nothing happens? Don't think you can turn this on or off like your water tap, and don't think the Spirit measures by the clock on the wall. Sometimes the assurance arrives in a breath. Sometimes the clouds must thin. Your part is fidelity, not performance. I have sat in hotel rooms with telegrams that could have emptied a bank account, and I have watched the pressure melt without one phone call, not because I out-argued the problem, but because, after the truth was stated, I refused to move until peace ruled. In another case, the assurance came not as stillness, but as a clean inner yes to make a difficult apology, at which point what had looked like iron necessity dissolved into nothing because it never had law behind it. Understand the outcome. When assurance comes, one of three things generally occurs. Either a profound quiet fills you, and without any outer act, the picture loses weight, as if gravity had been cut from it. Or a single right step is illumined, simple and doable, without panic. Or the very sense of me managing is gone, and life proceeds under a hand not yours. In each case, realize what has happened. Letting go has ceased to be a tactic and has become natural, because the basis of fear, the belief in a second cause, has been removed, and you have touched grace. Let no one imagine that waiting cancels responsible living. Waiting purifies action. It does not paralyze, it consecrates, not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. When the click is given, act, and act cleanly. Make the call without hidden bargaining. Take the medicine without worshiping it. Pay the bill without resentment. Decline the invitation without self-justification. Or, if nothing is to be done, do nothing without guilt. The hallmark is this: no fear management, no outcome juggling, only obedience to what assurance has revealed. Then your steps are ordered of the Lord, and you find that in the very act of walking you are born. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me beside the still waters. This is part 2 in practice. It is the living proof. Here, letting go is not bravado, not resignation dressed as wisdom. It is the effortless release that follows the realized presence. Begin with God. Expose the nothingness of a second cause. And then wait, truly wait, until the click of assurance is yours. When it comes, you will not congratulate yourself. You will know with quiet certainty that God is all, and that what once clamored for control has no jurisdiction at all. How then do we move? Having waited until assurance has come, how do we let go without being careless? I say this with a great deal of seriousness. Letting go is not neglect. It is the end of treating fear as intelligence. Letting go does not forbid steps. It forbids the worship of steps. It is the cessation of bowing to a second cause for counsel. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. And when assurance settles, steps are ordered, not managed. You will find that the same hand which quieted you will guide you, and the guidance will be free of strain, not the frantic impulse of I must do something, but the clean direction of this is the way, walk ye in it. We must make a plain distinction now. There is human outlining and there is spiritual responsiveness. What is human outlining? It is the mind drawing blueprints to appease its own fear, charting outcomes, bargaining with appearances, rehearsing speeches for gods it has invented. It is control masquerading as prudence. And what is spiritual responsiveness? It is obedience to inner direction born of realized presence. It is the difference between pushing a river and letting the current carry the boat while you attend to the oar that is actually in your hand. Outlining asks, how shall I secure the future? Responsiveness says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. And then listens for the next simple act. Therefore, responsible action under grace may look very ordinary. The difference is its source. You may make the call, but not to pry open a door, only to speak the word that is yours to speak. You may apologize, but not to purchase peace, only to acknowledge truth. You may set a budget, but not to enthrone numerals, only to order the symbol while knowing supply is God. You may rest not as avoidance, but as obedience to He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. You may see a professional when led, and you will do so without fear and without idolatry. Means are tools, not saviors. Hear me. There is no power in any effect, because God is all power. Therefore, the pill, the plan, the policy, the professional, the protocol, none is a cause. At best, they are occasions through which harmony appears when consciousness has already yielded to God. The moment you imagine a tool has intrinsic power, you are back under law, and fear will require more tools tomorrow. Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. Under that banner, you will discover right action freed from outcome juggling. Pay the bill without the silent theater of resentment. It has no altar. Decline the opportunity without the nervous footnote. You are not missing your life when God is your life. Sign the contract without superstition. Do not sign it to secure tomorrow. Tomorrow already rests in the infinite. Keep the appointment. Cancel the appointment. Wait another day. Take the train instead of the plane when assurance lays the step before you. Do it, and do it cleanly, and leave results with God. Outcomes are not God. The result of obedience is God's business. The act of obedience is yours. Someone will ask, but is this not risky? I tell you, the real risk is the idolatry of effects, because idolatry places you again under two powers, and then you must pay tribute to whichever idol you fear most. Under grace, action is simple because cause is one. You are not performing stunts to get results. You are witnessing God governing, and your deeds are the footprints of that governance. If you find drama, you have wandered into outlining. If you find quiet accuracy, you have remained in responsiveness. Do not make of this a weekend trick. Don't think you can turn this on or off like your water tap. If you carry fear as your counselor during the day and then try to switch to God awareness in emergencies, you will find only mixed signals. The lifestyle is this: continual non-judgment, continual remembrance that God is cause, continual refusal to assign power to effects. Then, whenever a step is required, it will be given in its hour, and you will act responsibly without the old inner management. Let this be your rule and your relief. Begin with God. Expose the nothingness of a second cause. Wait until assurance is present, and then act from that presence. In such action, there is no carelessness, because there is no fear to make you careless. There is only grace, quietly governing the next right thing. I say this with a great deal of seriousness. Don't think you can turn this on or off like your water tap. If you declare in treatment that God is all, and then spend the rest of the day in condemnation, comparison, and panic, you have undone the very ground you laid. You have moved from grace back under law, from one cause to many causes, from the first chapter of Genesis to the second. Doth a fountain send forth at the same place sweet water and bitter? You cannot speak truth in the morning and then let your tongue and your thoughts enthrone a second power at noon. The work is not a moment, it is a manner of life. Non-judgment is not moral laxity, it is spiritual protection. To refuse judgment is to refuse to label persons and events as powers, either for worship or for fear. Judge not that ye be not judged is not a rule to make us polite. It is the law that frees us from good and evil as authorities. When you call a person evil, you have assigned power to a mask. When you call a person good, as if goodness were personal, you have again split cause and invited disappointment. The Master cut it clean. Why callest thou me good? None is good, save one, that is God. Put all good in God. Remove all selfhood from error. Then your thought becomes a sanctuary in which appearances have no jurisdiction. Why must this be 24 hours a day? Because every reaction to appearances re-enters the law of good and evil, and every return to God abides in grace. The moment you flare with indignation, or tremble before a headline, or exalt a benefactor as your source, you have placed power out on effects, and effects will then claim the right to govern you. Ye are not under the law, but under grace. But you cannot be under grace and under judgment at the same time. Come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord. Come out from the market of opinions and the court of condemnations, and stand in the temple of oneness, where God alone is cause. I would suggest a simple daily rhythm to anchor this. Upon waking before the world speaks, take a few minutes to recognize God. God is. God is omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience. Therefore, there is no power in any effect. I and my Father are one. Let that be the first light in your house. During the day, use the short recognitions as you move between calls. At the door, at the sink, God is. There is no second cause. I live and move and have my being in Him. Let a breath of silence follow, just enough to sense the inward nod. In the evening, return to the deeper waiting. Let the heart be washed of the day's suggestions until assurance, however slight, rests in place. Pray without ceasing, not as a torrent of words, but a sustained availability to the presence. Watch and pray so that the little foxes, sarcasm, gossip, anxious comparing, do not spoil the vine. Understand the identity this demands. You are coming out from among them, out of the world of duality, into the brotherhood of Christ consciousness. You are not a citizen of two kingdoms. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Let your speech be the speech of oneness. Let your eyes be the eyes that refuse to see power in effects. Let your hands be the hands that do the next right thing without fear. Let the peace of God rule in your hearts, not as a visitor for emergencies, but as the governor of every hour. You cannot maintain office hours for reality. The practitioner in you is on call 2-4 hours a day because God is not a sometime present. Do not think that you can declare truth in a treatment and then entertain the luxury of outrage or superiority in conversation. Do not imagine that you can anchor supply in God and then rehearse poverty at the breakfast table. These permissions are costly. They take you back under the lash of cause and effect. Keep your thought consecrated. Refuse to judge. Refuse to condemn. Refuse to fear or to worship any effect. Begin with God. Expose the nothingness of a second cause, and let this be the constant climate of your days. The two-part treatment works as a life, not a trick. Continuous God awareness and non-judgment keep you under grace. And under grace, the next right step is quietly given. The heart is quietly ruled, and the yoke is quietly easy. This is really it. I say this with a great deal of seriousness. There are not many kinds of problems. There is one illusion of many powers, and there is one realization that dissolves it. God is all. Do not let the senses or the headlines convince you that some cases are medical, some financial, some relational, some political, each requiring its own little toolbox. That is the old law of many causes. That is Adam naming names and then hiding in the trees. Oneness admits only God as cause. Therefore, every case is treated the same. You start with the word God. You recognize God's allness and expose the nothingness of a second power. You wait in the holy quiet until assurance comes. Then you obey the right step revealed, free of fear management. That is the universal method. Let us name the appearances, not to give them status, but to bring them under the light. A diagnosis comes, pain flares, aging whispers its calendar. The treatment is one. God is life, the only life. God is law, the only law. There is no power in any effect, because God is all power. Therefore, there is no law of disease, no law of decay, no law of age writing upon identity. State the truth. Remove fear's jurisdiction. Then be still, and know that I am God. Wait until the inward peace settles and the compulsion to manage fades. When the assurance comes, either the picture lightens of itself or a simple right step is given. See the practitioner. Rest, walk, take the medicine without idolatry. Obey quietly. The cause is God. The step is obedience. The effect has no authority. Bills pile, a contract falls through, a job is lost, numbers glare on a screen as if they were God's. The treatment is one. God is supply, the only supply. God is substance. There is no separate economic law to starve where God is fullness. There is no law of lack. State it, withdraw the worship of digits, then wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Assurance will come, sometimes with a right act. Call this person, release that subscription, accept this work, give where you feared to hoard, or with a quiet that proves supply, is already moving without your theater. Act cleanly without bargaining. A relationship strains, conflict burns, addiction threatens, reputation is bruised by rumor. The treatment is one. God is love, the only love. God is mind, the only mind. There are no opposing private wills with law to collide. There is no law of separation. Affirm it. Remove from error selfhood, law, and cause. Then wait. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. Assurance may unveil the step. Apologize, bless, set a boundary, seek counsel, close your mouth or simply wash the heat out of the scene. Act from assurance, not from the craving to fix images. Storms, fires, markets in panic, governments in turmoil, the rhetoric of fear trumpeted night and day. The treatment is one. God is presence, the only presence. God is government, the only government. The government shall be upon his shoulder. God is the sanctuary and the shield. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Refuse the contagion of collective fear. Do not lend your consciousness as a loudspeaker for it. The instant a headline strikes your nerves, pivot within God is. There is no second cause. I and the Father are one, and hold until assurance quiets you. Then, if a step is shown, give, vote, volunteer, shelter, write. Do it without drama, knowing you are not moving powers on a chessboard. You are bearing witness to the one. I must warn against the great temptation. To specialize the treatment by problem type is to concede different powers and different laws. That is precisely what makes healing erratic. He shall not be afraid of evil tidings. His heart is fixed, trusting in the Lord. Fix the heart in oneness. When symptoms shout, when numbers bark, when voices accuse, when sirens wail, do not absorb the noise. Close the gates. Return instantly to omnipresence. God is. There is no power in any effect. Then wait for the click and follow the right step that assurance reveals. I tell you this not as theory. When this is practiced, protection appears where disaster was predicted. Supply arrives where arithmetic said no. The body yields where prognosis threatened. Estranged hearts soften without manipulation. We will speak to testimony, but understand now, effects yield not because we out-argued them, but because they never had power of their own. One illusion of many powers met by one realization: God is all. This is really it. I say this with a great deal of seriousness. Testimony is not story hour. It is evidence that spirit governs, that when assurance comes, the picture yields because it never had power of its own. Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. What are we proving? Not the prowess of a practitioner, not the luck of circumstance, but this single law. There is no power in any effect because God is all power, and when consciousness yields to that presence, fear's jurisdiction is revoked, and the appearance must fall of its own weight. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Once, between cities, at 30,000 feet, with the seatbelt light steady red, a woman in the row behind me was breathing in, quick, panic gasps, attendants bustling, faces taking on the solemnity of emergency. I turned not with anxious prayers, not with commands to her body, but to God. You start the treatment with the word God. God is omnipresence. Therefore, God is on this aircraft as surely as at any altar. God is life, the only life. Therefore, there is no law of crisis. God is law. Therefore, there is no law of accident to overthrow harmony. Having recognized this and removed from the picture any claim to power, I waited. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. In 2 or 3 breaths, the click, the unearned peace, the sweet, weighty hush. No heroics. A few minutes later, I heard the most ordinary sound in the world, the sound of a person breathing as if nothing had happened. The attendant smiled, someone made a light quip, and the plane continued as if a page had been turned. What changed? Not the law of gravity, not the contour of a lung, but the belief in a second cause lost its pedestal, and harmony, already present, appeared. Another night, on a mountain road glazed with black ice, a young father with his children in the back felt the car go into a slow, terrifying spin, guardrail on one side, drop on the other. In such a moment, there is no time for many words, but there is always time for God. God is presence. God is government. The government shall be upon his shoulder. In a flash, he refused the picture's authority, refused the worship of physics as power, and turned within, be still. The click came like a firm hand taking the wheel from behind the heart. The car corrected itself in a curve that made no sense to the eyes, kissed the shoulder, and rolled to a stop. No drama afterward, no boasting, only Psalm 91 whispering itself, He shall give his angels charge over thee, because thou hast made the Lord thy habitation. In another case, a man woke in the dark with a throat that felt closed, breath snatched in short, frantic pulls. Years of struggle had trained him to fight, to prop pillows, to make bargains with the night. This time he did not fight. He began where we begin. God is. God is life, the only life. God is mind, the only mind. There is no law of constriction where God is law, then silence, true waiting. In that hush, the fear broke like a brittle shell. The breath opened of itself, not forced, not counted, simply given. My peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth. The rest of the night was unremarkable, which is to say holy. What is common to these? No one moved powers on a chessboard. No one pushed with human will. In each, the practitioner, the one who turned to God, received the treatment. Truth realized, the nature of error seen as nothing, and the inner assurance given. The battle is the Lord's. The outer picture yielded not because we struck it, but because we withdrew our belief that it was a power. This is testimony. Witness that grace governs when the sense of two powers is surrendered. Let me add a correction. Do not chase phenomena. Do not measure your stature by fireworks or by the lack of them. An evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, the Master warned, and I say this with love. Seek not signs, seek the presence. Sometimes the assurance is quiet and nothing dramatic occurs outwardly, yet the knot of compulsion is cut, and that is the healing. Sometimes you will be led to a plain step to rest, to consult, to pay. We are not in the business of spectacles. We are in the practice of God. Therefore, let these witnesses encourage you not to admire, but to do the work. Begin with God, expose the nothingness of a second cause, wait until the click of assurance, then do the next right thing from that piece. Hear this and hear it again, and practice and repractice until assurance becomes the climate of your days. The proof is not thunder. The proof is the presence realized. When it is effects yield without struggle because they never had law of their own, this is really it. I would suggest now a very simple drill, and I say this with a great deal of seriousness. Do it as faithfully as you eat and as quietly as you breathe. 3 short recognitions. Part 1 in one period of true waiting. Part 2 in the morning, before the world lays its hands on your thought, before the screen, before the headlines, start the treatment with the word God. God is. God is omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience. God is life, the only life. God is mind, the only mind. God is law, the only law. Therefore, hear it. There is no power in any effect because God is all power. Let that be spoken, not to persuade God, but to reorder your case. Then insert a small silence. Be still and know that I am God. Not long, just until the inner nod, the slight easing of the grip. If a line of Scripture rises, receive it. This is the day which the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Now rise and wash and go about your tasks under this banner. At midday, wherever you are, in the doorway between appointments, at the sink, in the car, before stepping into the next room, pause for 1 minute and reset. God is. There is no second cause. I and my Father are one. Withdraw your consent from the picture that has tried to enroll you. Refuse to rehearse the problem in adjectives. Refuse to bargain with it. State the truth and then be still, even if only for a breath, until you feel the nervous system cease dictating reality. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Then go on without fanfare. Do not use this as a charm to get results. Use it to return to cause. In the evening, before sleep, release the day, not by replaying it, not by granting power to either praise or blame, but by returning all good to God and removing selfhood from error. God is all. There is no other power. There is no law of accident to memorialize. There is no law of contagion to fear. There is no law of depletion to honor. Forgive silently and actually any face you have been tempted to condemn. Judge not, that ye be not judged. Let a few moments of quiet follow, as if you were laying the day at the altar and leaving the church with nothing in your hands but peace. Sleep inside, Psalm 4. I will both lay me down in peace and sleep, for thou, Lord, only makest me dwell in safety. And once each day choose the hour you can keep enter the one period of true waiting. Begin, as always, with recognition God is. There is no second cause. There is no power in any effect, because God is all power. Acknowledge the nature of error as nothingness, as a belief in two powers, not a power in itself. Then cease speaking. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. Wait without the clock, without bargaining, without the little meter that asks, is it working? Don't think you can turn this on or off like your water tap. You are consenting to presence, not performing for a result. Sometimes the click comes in 2 breaths. Sometimes the clouds thin more slowly. Your part is fidelity. When the assurance settles peace without a reason, a soft, yes, a felt lifting rise, or if a step is given, obey it. If nothing is given, be content in the hush. This period is not a luxury. It is the hearth where the day is kept warm with God. What if you are triggered? If the email stings, the symptom flares, the dread climbs, the spine stop, do not answer the image on its terms. Begin with God. God is. Refuse to assign power to the effect. Take back your worship. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Then be still long enough that the body's noise ceases to run the courtroom of your mind. If it takes 30 seconds, give it 30. If it takes 3 minutes, give it 3. Do not text, do not buy, do not explain, do not strike until assurance, however slight, is present. Then, and only then, act as revealed one small, accurate step from peace, not 10 frantic maneuvers from fear. Set a boundary here. Do not use treatment to avoid necessary conversations or duties. Use it to remove fear and reveal right action. Be ye doers of the word and not hearers only. If the click sends you to apologize, go. If it sends you to pay, pay. If it sends you to rest, rest. If it sends you to consult, consult without idolatry, without drama. Means are tools, not powers. Obedience is worship, not outlining. Hear this and hear it again, do it and do it again, because consciousness is transformed not by one dramatic blaze, but by the steady return to one. Pray without ceasing does not mean talk without ceasing. It means live within this rhythm until assurance becomes your climate and peace your normal. The aim is not to feel spiritual. The aim is to be established in grace, where governance is inward and steady, and the next right thing is quietly given. 3 short recognitions, 1 deep waiting. God is all, then. Wait until your whole day breathes that sentence without effort. This is really it. Let this be gathered into 1 clear sentence and carry it with you as you would a compass. Begin with God. God is all. Omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience expose error as the belief in 2 powers, good and evil, and then wait in inward stillness until assurance comes and the right step, if any, is revealed. That is the entire arc, and I say this with a great deal of seriousness. It is not resignation, it is treatment. It begins in truth and concludes in peace, recognizable enough to guide your feet. Be still and know that I am God. Not know about God, not argue for God, but know God. And in that knowing, the pretense of a second cause loses its theater. I must leave you with both a warning and a promise, and they are one work. Do not dabble. Don't think you can turn this on or off like your water tap, declare oneness in the morning, and then live the rest of the day bargaining with appearances. That is under law. That is Genesis 2 and Adam's hiding and all the shame that follows. But live it quietly, continually, obediently. Begin with God. Expose the nothingness of a second cause. Wait for the inner click, and you will witness harmony where fear once governed. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. This is not a stunt. It is grace revealing itself where the noise of judgment has ceased. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. The kingdom is not afar off. It is at hand when cause is acknowledged as one. Re-anchor your identity before you rise from this seat. You are not a frightened mind learning coping skills. You are the place where God is realized. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? God constitutes your being. God is the life of you, the mind of you, the law of you, the supply and safety of you. There is only God manifest as creation. Therefore, there is no power in any effect, because God is all power. When you feel the old urge to manage, to grasp, to outline. Remember, that impulse is not you. That is the echo of a belief in two powers asking for worship. Refuse it. Why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is, God. Return all good to God. Remove selfhood from error. Stand as the temple through which grace is seen. So here is the final imperative, and make it the rule of your next hour. When something appears uncontrollable, symptom, headline, bill, quarrel, treat it the same way every time. Start with the word God. God is. God is presence here. God is the only cause. There is no second cause, no law apart from God, no power in any effect. Then be still, truly still. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. Wait until assurance is given, the soft, yes, the unargued peace, the lifting of the compulsion to manage. If a step is shown, do it cleanly. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. If nothing is given, rest under the banner of already governed. Let the peace rule and the hour proceed. This is letting go without carelessness. This is action without fear management. And now, as you go, do not take these words as a bright afternoon and then return to the market of opinions by evening. Keep the climate non-judgment, oneness, sacred waiting, so that you are found under grace when the world calls for a verdict. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. That is not poetry for funerals. That is governance for Monday morning. Live as one, come out from among them, separate from the superstition of many powers, and gentle among all, because you worship one. The work in every hour, in every place, in every case is this. God is all, then wait until grace, not fear, governs your next step. This is really it.